Ladies and gentlemen, community, Steve, welcome to this new episode of Newsworthy Minute. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How about you? I spot a difference. There's something, it's the hair, it's the beard. No, it's your shirt, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, I just talked to this one guy from the UK. It was about football and Jurgen Klopp. So I was like, I decided when we talk in English and we expand worldwide, we have to be connected to something everybody loves, and that's sports, football, and netted. So that's why I'm wearing this shirt and not a flow shirt. Next time you will find me in a flow shirt, for sure.
I hope so. Yeah. As you also might have mentioned, it is a known format. So we do this podcast once a month in Germany, but it also has changed the language. So we are not speaking in Deutsch heute. Yeah. But we will talk to you guys in English, and there's a reason why we are doing this. And the reason is, Timo, why?
Our special guest, Paul. Please welcome Paul. It's nice to have you here. Please join us. So, Paul, for all the people that are out there that don't know you, who are you and why are you here? And why are you our special guest? Because we just want special guests and you're very special. Please introduce yourself.
Guten Tag, Steve und Timo. And that's it. Yeah, and that's it. That's as much German as I've got. So, guys, thank you for doing this in English because
awesome.
This would be one heck of a show if I was speaking German. Hey, guys, great to be here. Thanks for having me on, Timo. I'm glad you remembered our Jurgen Klopp conversation because you are indeed my second and third favourite Germans behind Jurgen. So hey, that's an honour, gents. That's a real honour for you. Who am I? Well, my name's Paul Stringfellow. I'm technical director of a data management consultancy here in the UK. We've been a NetApp partner for a very long time. But we specialize in data management, particularly the idea of security, governance, and broader kind of management, integrating public cloud, all the things that our customers are kind of coming and talking to us about. So,
Yeah, but before we dive right into the conversation, we have this ritual. You might haven't noticed since the real podcast is in German, but we do this kind of rapid fire questions. So 3 simple to answer questions. So that's what I think. Timo kind of doesn't think like that. But 3 simple questions you need to answer as fast as possible. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Cool. So the best movie you have ever seen?
My favorite film is Amadeus. So 1984 film about Mozart.
Okay, that was when we were -5 years old.
Hey, you're allowed to watch films from the past, guys. That's okay. It's allowed.
How to consume it? Netflix-ish something?
Go search for it. I'm sure you'll find it somewhere.
Okay,
video,
cool.
VHS cassette. It's definitely on that.
VH what? Yeah, just kidding. I used to have one. So your favorite long drink?
Favorite long drink?
Drink, cocktail, whatever you drink when you're in the Caribbean Sea.
I don't know. I don't drink cocktails. So I haven't got one.
Then your favorite beer?
Favorite beer? I need to pick something German, don't I? In fact, what I need to pick. No, I do. I need to pick the one that Jurgen Klopp advertises. And if only I could remember what it was called, it would be that one. Guys, I know because I've got a bottle in the fridge and I quickly ran down to have a look what it is. It's Erdinger. So let's have that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, cool. And last but not least, your first vacation you already had or going to have after COVID?
First vacation after COVID. That's a great question. First trip abroad is probably going to be a train trip across Europe, though. So looking to do that kind of March time next year. We will be paying a visit into Germany as part of that as well. I'll come and see you. That'll be great.
We can have a beer.
I'll bring the Erdingers with me, and we'll meet up wherever in Germany that I'm supposed to be going.
Yeah, let's meet in Germany then.
So as far as our topic today is ransomware, you said you're a specialist in security and ransomware and stuff. So I work with NetApp for more than 10 years now. And a lot of stuff has changed. And you said like VHS, and it's like VH what? So not even in the security and in the infrastructure part, but the world has changed dramatically in the last 10 years, not only with NetApp. What do you think about it?
Yeah, and I think you make a great point. And, and the topic, you're right. I mean, obviously, we were chatting about this before we decided you were going to invite me on your show. Madly decided you were going to invite me on your show. I don't know what you guys were thinking, but yeah, the idea of I said in my introduction that I'm a IT director at a data management consultancy. Obviously, a big part of the way that we look at data today is driven by the way that we look at security, and I think that one of the reasons that the world has changed so much, and the way that we look at data and the way we look at securing data has changed, is because the way that we operate has changed a lot. You talked about the kind of over the last 10 years. I think it's the time you guys have been at NetApp, actually, isn't it? And I suppose if you look at the things that have changed over those 10 years, we've become much more reliant on technology. We kind of everything that we do as a business today is driven by technology in one way or another. I mean, if I was to wind back 5 or 6 years and talk to companies about their disaster recovery plans, their business continuity plans, they would spend a lot of time also looking at ways that they may be able to operate as a business without technology. So if the technology wasn't there, can we go back to paper? Can we find other manual ways of coping with that? Even that now is increasingly difficult for organizations. The move to the cloud has been a real big change over the kind of the last 10 years, to the point now where we've all heard the likes of Matt Watts talk about this kind of cloud first idea. This idea that when we're considering a new infrastructure project or a new kind of application project, can we put it in the cloud? Not necessarily we should, but can we? And if not, why not? And I think that's kind of a big shift. But even at a simpler level, the idea that Office 365 or Microsoft 365 has become almost the standard for the way lots of businesses deliver some kind of simple back office operations, where they, sometimes for file repositories, for email, for things like Teams, these have become kind of things that we expect to use. And also that kind of shift into this idea of much more data focused organizations as well. I think data has, if anything has changed over the last 10 years, it's the way that we look at data. I think, it's this idea that data is now very much central to the way businesses operate. It's the way we make decisions. It's where we keep customer information. It's where we keep intellectual property, and that's why some of the security risk, and I guess we'll get onto this, but that's why some of the security risks that we have today have also changed, because the target has changed a little bit. And all of this, is kind of come about in a very different operating environment, from a regulatory point of view. All us three guys are in Europe. Some of us used to be in the EU, but that's another episode. Let's not do that episode today. But things like GDPR, now we have the UK Data Protection Act as kind of a copy and paste exercise, but things like the Californian Data Protection Acts around the world mean that we operate our businesses in this much more regulatory environment. So while data is core to what we're trying to do, and we need to have it portable, and we need to be able to share it, and we need to be able to interact together, we're doing that with a regulatory framework that puts a real focus on making sure that we are looking after that data properly. So, all of these kind of things have changed, and as you said before, none of us are operating our businesses with, a Windows 95 PC and, their latest, Nokia brick phone device and recording things on VHS tape. None of us are doing those kind of things anymore. And we need to think about our security in a different way as well. But yeah, I mean, is that reflected in what you guys see as well? In your time at NetApp, have you seen a lot of that kind of stuff change as well?
So yes and no. So it depends on the situation, the customer. So I would like to quote Matt Watts here, and I hope, Matt, you don't mind me. So when he talked to customer, he always uses this reference about so what is your strategy? And the answer is cloud first. No, that's a mandate. But what's your strategy? Okay, it's cloud first, Azure. That's a destination. What is your data and your application strategy? And this is where the customers strive into different directions. So where are they today? Where are they going to be in 1, 2, 3, 5 years? And how are they taking care of their data security, data protection, applications, and how to manage this whole ecosystem that's getting bigger and bigger? Not mentioning those bad guys. So since you are the data security expert, and we are talking about modern security threats and stuff like that, we would like to know a bit more about your daily business and how these bad guys are acting today. So bad guys. Now there's the coding science. So how are those guys acting today compared to 10 years from now? And what does a modern security threat look like from your perspective?
Heck yeah, there's a lot there, Steve. Thank you. There's a lot for me to unpack, as people like to say. But I mean, the first and most important part of that is that Matt Watts won't for a minute mind you quoting him. Matt loves to be quoted, so hey, Matt, I quote you all the time. He knows that, so that's good. So we're safe. We're on safe ground. You know, and I think I think you raise a great point. You know, Timo said in his introduction, kind of when we first spoke, we ended up talking about football. You know, it's kind of one of my passions. You know, and I think sports are kind of an interesting analogy almost in that, you know, when we look at the way the world has changed, you know, and I did some presentations at some vendor events earlier in the year, and a part of that event, one of the things that we talked about was, you know, if you look at people who've been successful in sports this year, so we just had the US Ryder Cup team, you know, they just had maybe we shouldn't be talking about that as Europeans, but the US Ryder Cup team, we look at Emma Raducanu's victory at the US Open, you know, we look at Chelsea winning the European Cup, as much as that pains me to say. You know, you kind of look at these teams winning these kind of things, and you know, the way that they do that is because they have kind of a modern playbook, a modern strategy for winning those things. You know, none of them are winning those things looking back at how things were won 10 years ago, because that's just, you know, they kind of build their approach based on the modern challenge that faces them. You know, it's the what does the modern opponent look like, what does the modern skill set that we need, the best tools for the job, what do those things look like? And when we come looking at security, we need to consider that, and I think a big part of that is understanding kind of the security environment that we work in. You know, what are the, you know, you use the phrase kind of bad guys, the bad actors out there. You know, what do they have at their hands? What are they trying to do? And I think perhaps the first thing to realize is what's the thing that they're targeting. In all of our organizations, really the target is data. You know, and whether that is stealing data, so whether that's taking data away from us so that they can use that, either they sell it on the dark web or they are looking to use that in some kind of to gain competitive advantage or to access your customer information. There's loads of reasons that people might want that, or they don't want you to access it. So that's kind of where ransomware sits in this. You know, the idea of ransomware is encrypt all that information so you can't use it. You know, when we've all seen, I mean, I kind of touched before about how business has changed. We've all seen the massive impact that a business being unable to access its data, the massive impact that has. You know, you look at kind of the US pipeline thing that we had earlier this year. You can look at that across. We had stories over here in the UK about the NHS last year. You know, it's all of those kind of things where it stops business operating. So what does the kind of the modern, you know, so these guys are after our data. You know, what does that kind of modern cybersecurity threat look like? You know, so I think if we look at what are the tools that are available to them, so the obvious ones are malicious code. You know, it's the idea that can I get malicious code into your environment so that I can do something to your environment that you won't want me to. But it's not just that. You know, one of the big areas that we've also seen is the idea of people attacking identity. You know, so it's this idea. We've seen a massive increase across all of our customer base. We've seen a massive increase in phishing attacks. So the idea that people are looking to steal identities. Why do they want to steal identities? Because that makes getting access to your infrastructure so much easier, because hey, it's much easier for me to log into your cloud infrastructure if I've got your identity, you know, and if I've got privileged access via your identity, heck, I can come in and I can just delete all of your information. You know, we've all heard of stories like that. And then of course there's also this kind of insider threat that we also have to look to deal with. You know, it's you know, and these again, this is kind of a change in the way that we look and the way that we operate. This idea that traditionally we may have looked at our security as you know, we've got a perimeter firewall we're using, they're based in our office. You know, all of this stuff allows us to secure these things. Well, the world's changed. You know, all three of us are having this conversation from our various homes around Europe. You know, and you know, that's not something that we were all comfortable doing kind of 5 years ago. But because of that, because of the distributed nature of the way we work, the idea that we can protect at a perimeter, where even is that? The idea that we're all using enterprise class networks and devices, well, that's not the case either. You know, and I think if we tie along with that, the idea that just because a user has logged on with some credentials, Well, the idea that that user can now have full access to absolutely everything, again, that's something we need to move away. And you guys have probably heard this kind of conversation around zero trust, you know, and we can kind of maybe dig into that. But that's how the kind of whole thing's changed. You know, it's driven by, lots of it is driven by the way that we work changing, and today the way that we operate has changed, has accelerated and changed hugely over kind of the last 18 months. And so the cyber threat has changed because of it as well, you know, and they're kind of the things that we kind of come across, you know, and you know, I mean, you guys are talking to customers all the time. Is that a reflection of what you see? You know, have you seen kind of a change in the way business is operating, which is maybe introducing different security risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were talking about the last 10 years and what was changing and how fast it was changing and how fast it will change in the future, I was thinking about my first customer I was talking to about security in that time, and it was like there's a data center and you can build a wall around it because everybody's going to work and they have their data inside this wall and that's it. So security as a wall around the data center, around the company. But as you said, like today we work from our homes in the cloud in different data centers with different service providers, and it changed the way how we have to look on data. And when you talk about security, you have to talk about and think about data and other way around. So when you talk about data, you have to think about security, because just bringing the data where you need it, that's not the solution. So you always have to think about some stuff to keep in mind, and you have to think about what to do about. So what do you think has changed and how we will act in the future when it comes to how are we put security on the stuff that's changing? Because when the way how we work is changing pretty fast and how the data is distributed and stuff, the way the bad guys are acting changes as well, because they can sit in their living room in as well, and the way they can attack is changing dramatically and pretty fast. So what do you think is the answer to all of that changes today and for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the answer. It would be great, wouldn't it? Because we could just stop now and kind of get on with our lives. But yeah, but I think it's loads of things again you've mentioned there that are hugely important. You know, and I think that actually that idea of, and I've only been talking to somebody about this week, that idea of kind of ransomware as a service. You know, this is a reality. You know, if you are a kind of a bad actor, you want to kind of launch a ransomware attack, you can literally find a service provider who will do ransomware for you. You know, it's important. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, you're right, Steve. It's absolutely crazy. But the reality, that's the reality that that's the kind of reality that we live in. And you know, and that's because this is not about. You kind of talked about, you know, somebody's kind of a script kiddie sat in a bedroom, or somebody sat in the bottom of the garden in some kind of shed. You guys have sheds. You know what a shed is? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's not just an English thing, is it? That's okay.
What is shit?
Okay, I was just checking, like a little wooden thing at the bottom of the garden. You put tools in. So anyway, yeah. So there's a long German word for that. I'm sure there is a very long German word.
Of course,
but it's shed in English. So yeah, anyway, but it's not just that. This is a big money making enterprise, and that's what we're up against when it comes to security. You know, and I think that while there isn't an answer to how we solve this, because the threat, one of the big challenges is that while we talked earlier on about how we've evolved the way that we work, you know, that we've all moved away from VHS videos and that kind of thing, as we've changed how the world operates, the threat continues to change as well, and that is going to continue to be the case. It's this kind of constant battle between staying ahead of what the cyber criminals doing, but doing all of that in a way that we can still operate as a business. We've talked about data at our core. You know, the idea that we should be, we're building our businesses around data. We need to be able to use it. We need to be able to share it. It needs to be portable. It needs to be accessible. So how do we deal with that? And I think actually something, Timo, you said earlier on is hugely important when you consider this. And this is that when you build kind of a modern security platform, for me, make sure it's data centric. Think about the data first, and this is true across the whole, this is kind of why I love talking with NetApp around this kind of subject, because this is very true about the way, for me, that we should be looking at our technology infrastructure anyway. It's to be data centric about it. Think about what you want from the data and then make everything else deliver that. And that's what NetApp do. That's what the data fabric's about. NetApp's view of building a data focused strategy. So from a security point of view, there's kind of 4 or 5 things that I would suggest that people do, just maybe just something they can take away from this episode. So I think first thing, number 1, realize you are a target. I think one of the big things that we come up against a lot is that organizations don't feel that they're a target. Who'd be interested in my data? Nobody's ever heard of us. Why would they? I can see why Coca-Cola are a target, but because everybody's heard of them. But why would we be a target? You don't even have to be a target. The idea that there's some kind of spray attack going on that just is targeting millions of individuals, that's the reality. The reason that there is hundreds and hundreds of phishing scams running at any particular time, it's just I'm after an identity. Let me see what I can find out with that identity. So I think that's an important point, is realize that you are a target. Your data is a target to somebody, whether you think it is or not. The next thing maybe sounds obvious: get the basics right. Make sure you've got a good basic security posture. Do the simple things. Have good password policies. Use multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor all of the things. If you can multi-factor it, multi-factor it. Make sure you've got access controls in place. This idea of, and these are all kind of things that start to sit in this kind of idea of, I touched on this before, these zero trust security models. Don't just because you think somebody's who they say they are, that doesn't mean that you should trust them implicitly doing things across your network. That's just not the way we should be operating. Do simple things. Are you patching? Make sure you're patching your systems. Heck, have you got antivirus and anti-malware protection that is up to date? So are you doing all of those things? So get those basics right. Here in the UK, we have a thing that we call Cyber Essentials, and I know around the world there's equivalents of this, but Cyber Essentials is a UK government initiative to give companies a kind of a certification for meeting security baselines. Go and find out what your version of that is. Just do that basic stuff. And I think a big thing we often miss is education. Build a security culture inside of your organization. I think that's a huge thing. So many businesses, and you guys may have seen this, but so many businesses that I'll talk to around data security will talk about their users as the ultimate problem. It's our users. Our users are clicking on links. They're opening things they shouldn't be doing. They're causing us all kinds of hassle. Well, that's great. Have you educated them not to do that? Have you educated them on the risk? Have you educated them on the importance of your data and why losing that data is a risk? Why the threat of ransomware is so huge? So are we doing enough? Because if you can educate your users, instead of just looking at ways to blame our end users as being our biggest data leak threat, why don't we look at the way that we use our users and make them the best line of defense that we've got when it comes to security? So, I'm a big fan of that. But education and culture, make sure as a business, your people are happy to talk about security. And, and we talked about this a couple of times, but make data the core of your thinking. Build your security around your data, build security into data by default. Make sure it's there. I'm a big fan of using things like information rights management, so that when data leaves the confines of your infrastructure or your data repositories, you still maintain a level of control of that. And moving to things like Microsoft 365 have made that easy. Working with things like NetApp's DataSense. I mean, DataSense is a wonderful product in this space, but DataSense integrates in with that Microsoft rights management capability, can scan your information, can find sensitive information, can apply control to that information based on what we've told it, what we're looking for. So make data at the core of your thinking. And I think, and maybe one other tip, just maybe one other thing for people to think about is invest in your cybersecurity, invest in your data security, because I think too often it's still, while it seems such a high profile conversation, it's often very difficult to get money out of the board to fund data, to fund security initiatives. And the way to do that really is to make sure you've got buy-in at all levels of the business, that everybody understands why data security is important. So they're kind of 4 or 5 things that I will always talk to people about. So I know I covered an awful lot there and we haven't got loads of time. So, but I mean, guys, are they kind of tips that make sense to you?
Absolutely. And since we only have a few minutes left, I would just like to wrap things up, like to kind of recap the last 20-25 minutes, to give some call to action as something that we can just kind of pinpoint to 2 or 3 key takeaways they would like to offer our listeners and watchers to kind of get something or get the most out of this talk. So Timo, what's your key takeaway for today's session? And maybe Paul, and then we can kind of get some sort of closing done.
To always have, when you think about data, always think about security as well. and the other way around, because data is in the heart of the organizations. And when you forget the security, the data is worth nothing. So always have in mind to secure your data when you bring it where you need it. That's my closing thought.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, and I think that's a great one. In fact, Timo, that was such a good one. I wish I'd said it. So that's unfortunate.
No, that's not allowed anymore.
Yeah. So, well, do you know what? If there was one thing that I would suggest that you take away, and if it was just to be one thing, it's buy-in. You know, I talk about this with organizations an awful lot. You know, when you're building a data security strategy, make sure everybody in your organization understands why. You know, from the very top, you know, the guys at the chief exec and at board level, down to the guy who started last week, make sure they understand why data is hugely important to you and why data security has to be core to your thinking. Because without buying, everything, you know, things actually Timo just talked about, which are hugely important, the things that I've kind of raced through in kind of this half hour that we've had, you know, all of those kind of things will be very, very difficult for you to implement if, one, your business doesn't understand why, because then nobody's going to fund it. And if at the other end of the scale, if your users don't understand why that this is, those users don't understand why it's important that you're doing what you're doing, they're just going to push back and fight any kind of security initiatives you put in. So if there's one thing you can take away from this, take away the idea that get buy-in, make sure people understand why data and data security is important. So there you go. How's that?
Thank you very much. So we would really like to thank you, Paul. So this is our first episode in English, the first episode with a 30-minute time slot. And we really appreciate you being here with us and giving us insight in your daily business. So thanks a lot. Timo, any last words for the audience?
I would say thank you very much, even if our English is not that good. It's always a pleasure to try something new. And I mean, try something new, talk about security, talk about data, talk to Paul about this stuff. And yeah, always keep us in mind, because NetApp is a huge player, even when it comes to security, and you don't think about storage. We are a data management company that can help you in all of this kind of stuff. And our partners, just as Paul is, are very good in this kind of in this kind of stuff. So talk to us, talk to our partners, and that's it. Thank you very much.
See you in Germany.
Yeah, Paul, see you in Germany. Hey, guys, I can't wait, and I'll learn some German, and I'll say hello to Jürgen while I'm here. I'll say you guys said hi.
Yeah.
But hey, guys, well, I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you doing this in English so that I could be on. I apologize to all of your German viewers, because no doubt I've spoken way too quickly, and they will be playing this on half speed. So, but yeah, thanks. And, you know, and this is a great topic. I love this topic. You know, and I think I kind of love working with NetApp on this kind of stuff as well, because you know, we didn't even get time to touch on some of the kind of security initiatives that NetApp have with things like Datacentric, with Cloud Insights, with things that are getting baked into ONTAP. So, you know, find out that stuff, because NetApp have got a really good story in this space. They take security very, very seriously, bake it into all their thinking. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll talk about this topic all day long with anybody who'll listen for long enough. So, guys, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Your English was fantastic, and see you again. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.